Slack, it's Good News Broadcast, speaking to Sunni Brown. Hi, Sunni. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. You have a great name.
Yeah, no pressure to be optimistic, right?
And we're going to talk about a lot of optimism before. I believe we've spoken before in the past. You're a business owner, information designer, and author of one of Amazon's top 100 business books, GameStorming, a playbook for rule breakers, innovators, and changemakers. Yay!
Good news.
We love good news.
Yes.
What's the book about?
It's actually, it's in a very simplistic way to describe it, it's about using visual thinking to help businesses get to breakthrough ideas.
Okay, so they use visual thinking, but then do they have to like put it down on a piece of paper, or do they speak it, or they do both?
Right. So it's all office supplies that you can use in any office setting. So that includes index cards, Sharpie pens, sticky notes, any of those tools that normal offices would have. And so the idea is that you get a group of people together, you give them a problem to solve, and then you have them doodle and draw it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually really effective. Yeah.
They have to go to the Bahamas to do this?
Well, they can, which would be kind of exciting. In fact, we have a doodle that was submitted at sharpieuncapped.com. Are there doodles behind me? Yeah, and one of them had a picture of the Bahamas, and they asked me, what was she thinking? And I was like, she's thinking about vacation, is what she's thinking.
Well, isn't this is, I mean, people have, I believe, what were Rorschach tests?
Right.
What were those? I mean,
well, you remember they were ink blot tests, and they were supposed to give you insight into how brilliant or deranged you might be.
Right.
I don't know how effective they were, but they were certainly left an imprint on our culture, didn't they?
They sure did.
Yeah.
And in essence, that was visualization. Well, there's some people that just even look up in the sky and they see a cloud and they see a whole story, right?
They do, and in fact, most of us and in fact, all of us are really primed to be visual thinkers because of the way that we're wired. And so to ask someone to doodle is just a very natural act. It's like asking them to start walking, because people start doodling at very young ages, and they really only drop it off when they get to a situation where it's not appropriate anymore. But it is a natural thing for all of us to think visually.
And that's probably when it's the most appropriate, and you need the most help to be calmed down instead of going to a shrink.
Right. Exactly. People use doodles as ways to process. A lot of times it's subconscious information, but it can also be conscious information, and it's a really incredible relaxation technique as well. So that's part of the revolution. Part of the doodle revolution.
I think with the doodle revolution, since you're the queen doodler. I think I can see it as a family occasion. I can see it as a work occasion. So give us some ideas of things that people can do, and I'll take those Sharpie pens, and zoop and do it. And
I'm glad
things that they can do.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked, because it is a fun family activity. And what I've loved to see, because I'm the resident expert on sharpieuncapped.com, analyzing people's doodles, and what I love to see is when there are submissions from what I can tell is a family. So what I would suggest is that you get a family to submit their doodles to me, and in the hopes that one of them may be the daily doodle. But it's just a fun activity for people to do together, and you never know, they might find creative ideas that they hadn't thought of. So that's certainly something that a family could do together.
Now, what is considered doodling? Do we go do? Well, let's get to some technical doodling. Okay, do you go to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and is that your place to doodle, and say in this situation, because you'll have to scan it and then send it in?
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, you can also take a digital photograph of the doodle and just plug your camera into your computer and upload it. So if you want to do something larger, because actually a lot of the images on Sharpie Uncapped are really large scale, and I can tell they've taken a digital photograph. But yeah, sure, start on an index card. You can start on something really small, because that can get my attention too.
Okay. I see something here, visual alphabet. What is that?
The visual alphabet is a way for me to help people familiarize themselves with entering into the world of doodling, because not everybody's comfortable with it. I know that people are when they're younger, but at some point, either in school or in the workplace, you get your knuckles wrapped for doodling. So the visual alphabet is basically a way to show people, look how simple it is. It's a dot, it's a line, it's an arch, it's a spiral, it's a square, and those are all things that anyone feels comfortable doing, and so that's why we created the alphabet.
In your doodle research, the doodle I did was that stick figure, right? Of a person, and I drew a house, because I could put a line, a little, a diagonal line, and I got some depth to it.
Good.
I think the party was over after that. So, is it kind of common for somebody to do the same kind of doodle their entire life?
Yes, it actually is. And actually, a lot of our presidents are what I call abstract doodlers, which means that they do the same shape repeatedly. And like I said, I can't tell you what that means about them, because Nixon was an abstract doodler, and people are always like, that must mean, but I have no idea what it means. But a lot of times it's just a relaxation technique, and it's just a way for people to think without having to think in words, So it's totally fine if you repeat the same doodle over and over.
You know what? I just realized something in this conversation, that my doodle with my happy face, the arms and the legs, is the logo of Good News with a happy face.
What a coincidence.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I can't imagine. I wish I could see it. I haven't seen your doodle.
Yeah, well, go goodnewsbroadcast.com, and in essence, that's my doodle.
I bet it's beautiful.
It's marvelous. I trademarked it. I got more mature. Somebody said, well, you better trademark those kinds of things. How about that? I mean, when you look at logos, I mean, some are a little bit, I guess, more mature, but some are kind of, they took a letter and they made the letter backwards, right? And that became a $1 trillion trademark. Right?
Absolutely. Simplicity in logos is generally considered a really good rule, and so those are accessible to anyone to create. And my logo, in fact, is just my initials, sketched out in my own handwriting. And it's a more sort of accessible way to draw people in. People like simplicity in their drawing. That's why children's drawings are so compelling for us, because they're so authentic and simple.
GameStorming. Tell what in essence does that? I know that's the name of the book.
Right.
And so, what are some of the kinds of things in there?
So there's over 80 business games, and they don't have to be in a business setting, but there are 80 games. And so, for example, one of them can be I call it the history map. So you may have an organization that has a really long history, a 70-year history, but not everybody in the organization is familiar with the history. So that's a game where people get together, and instead of just storytelling of verbally, they actually start to draw together as a group the history of the organization and go through it. And you'd be surprised the effect that it has, orienting people and getting them to sort of feel like they're a part of the company. So that's an example of one of the types of games that you could play, and it's all visual thinking based.
Wow!
Yeah, it's fun.
I love history, especially of companies, how they began.
Oh yeah, and there's always some old timers there that people don't necessarily use them to get information from them, and they're like wealths of information. And so a lot of times when I play the history game, I make sure that I get the people that are about to retire who've been there a long time to stand up and tell us about how it started, because they have rich information.
And I think those history situations also become the sort of like a common thread between the whole company. Fred Smith gets a C on a paper for moving packages, or I think the UPS guy was a mail guy. Just throwing newspaper. Those stories kind of go through the company, and it's usually just an everyday occurrence of some sort.
Right, but it's not captured.
That's not captured, then eventually was captured, that might have been a smart thing to do as a business, right?
Oh, yeah, no, it is a really smart thing to do, and because it's not just a fun activity, it really is about creating sort of the personality of the company, so that when people work there, they feel like they're part of a team and part of something that really has an identity. And also, it's almost like camaraderie building as well, because people just, start telling stories, then they laugh, and then they all, go to happy hour or something, it's a good time for people to do it. But
normally they sit, if they have a pen, a lot of people doodle. Do a lot of people doodle because of nervous? I mean, say ex-smokers and that are used to having something in their hand.
Yes, they do. My friend Jeffrey Zeldman, he just told me that he started smoking when he stopped drawing. And I was like, you might want to reverse that order. But yeah, a lot of times when people are in meetings and they pick up a pen and they doodle, they're doing that so that they have some nervous energy, and they have a way to channel that nervous energy. So they're not doing it because they're checking out. They're doing it because they're trying to check back in.
Aha. Okay. How about you, Sunny? How did it begin for you?
Oh, how could I summarize this? So I've always been a visual thinker. That's definitely how I learn. I'm a visual and a kinesthetic learner, which means in order to really remember something, I have to move around and I have to see it. And so I didn't know that, of course, until I started getting into this field and doing homework about it. But I fortuitously landed at a company that used visuals as a technique. And once I got there, I knew that I was home, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then I started realizing that that everybody, the large majorities of our population and all over the world are visually oriented people. And so I started thinking, like, how can I make it okay to draw at work, and to draw at school? And so that's when I started doing actual homework about, how have people used it? What kind of inventions have come about because of drawing? Who are some of our most celebrated artists and so forth? Long story short, I guess that would be one summary of it.
Okay. How about this could be quite helpful for people in problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
How do you suggest? So there's a problem of any sort. Is there some thought? I mean, like sometimes people say you in one situation write it down. Write down the goods and the bads.
Right. Write the pros and cons. Yeah.
What are the good? What's the bad? What do you do with visualization? What do you do?
So a lot of times when you make lists of pros and cons, that's a helpful activity too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating that people don't use words anymore, but what you do is you tend to repeat the same information, right? And you don't look at it in a different way. So what happens when you create a visual of that is that you start making associations and between information that you wouldn't otherwise make. Because when you have something in a linear form, then you're only connecting the dots like this. But if you mapped it in a visual way, and it's as simplistically as putting a dot here, and saying pro and con, then your brain starts to associate that information in ways that you really would not do if you weren't using visuals. Yeah, so that's why it really does tap into your creativity, because it's sort of the definition of creativity is finding something new, and that's what it does to help you find something new.
Is the dot coloring book the beginning of all this?
The dot coloring book?
Where they have the dots, just the lines. You put one dot to the line to the line to the line.
I don't see why it wouldn't. I'm sure it would work just fine, yeah. Is it for kids, or who's it for?
Yeah, for kids. And we started, that was my best artwork. You went from number 1 to number 2 to number 3.
I bet it's beautiful.
And you end up with a clown, and you said, boy, I drew a clown.
Oh, right,
you know
yeah.
What I mean?
Oh, no, I love that, because that actually creates a memory for you. So, of course, I realize now what you're referring to. Yeah, that creates a visual memory that people, then they can draw the clown again without the dots,
I'm a much better drawer than a speaker.
Are you? You must be pretty good then, huh?
Yeah, with those stick figures, happy faces.
The stick figures work too.
So, Sunni, once again, where should people go? And what do you mean? They can actually be on your website with their creative work?
Yeah, they can submit at sharpieuncapped.com, where I'm the doodle expert, and they can post anything that they want. And there's a lot of beautiful work up there already. There's already thousands. But so that's the idea, is that through September 3rd, I'll be doing a daily doodle analysis, and so I would love to see people submitting at Sharpie Uncapped, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you're a lot of fun. Sunni,
thanks,
thank
Paul.
you very much for sharing all the good news.
Oh, my pleasure.
Take care.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good day.